Farmer Courtney here, hiding out in my daughter's room, making a video real quick about the so-called food shortages, right? So this morning, as I was tidying up the house, I thought to myself, we gotta uproot that language because I just feel like it's taking over conversations. And this was before the No Good News started repeating it, like food shortages, food shortages, food shortages. And I just thought, you know what, like it's intentional supply disruption because they have a think tank, making carbon the enemy and having them think that they're gonna redo the food supply and the way humans eat, and just kind of throwing all nutritional wisdom from ages out the window, and them just looking at a bunch of different numbers and categories of like nutrient line item, like what percentage, without any like connection whatsoever to the earth, humanity, food, farming systems, community, nothing. Like they just totally want to remake the face of agriculture to meet their little science fiction agriculture theories and projects and things. And that's fine, like if you want to experiment like Pauly Shore and like the biosphere, like if that's the scale that you want to do your little experiment on, cool. However, that's not what they're planning on doing. So I heard this interview on the High Wire with somebody was talking to Bill Gates about, oh, yeah, we made some mistakes, during the pandemic with the school closures and stuff. Like kids in public school, it was really disruptive. They lost a couple years. Kids in private school, they really didn't have much interruptions at all. Actually, they learned and school functioned quite well, in fact. And then there's this awkward silence of him being like, yeah, well. So during that time where, people in America who were already not really that focused on the food supply were suddenly dealing with the few supports that did make life livable and able to function and, carry on as we're all trying to keep up. Like knocking those things out one after the other, whether you homeschooled or whether your kids were in school or not. It was really disruptive because pretty much across the board, all programs were affected, homeschool wise and, public school for sure. And so, that's when I just really started thinking like they're going for it. This is unrelated, changing topic, but related. So many people have been kind of catching on to what Zillow has been doing to the real estate market. So there's been a thing going on with the family farms, right? And like the real estate of farmland. And then there was the buzz about Bill Gates is the largest farmland owner in the United States. And it's kind of like, well, how did that happen? And why is that happening? And it was just, more than a blip on the radar. People are talking about it. But as far as, the checkmate move of why he is the largest farmland owner, that we're still many steps away from that. However, there's a plan in place lined up. So the other night I was in digital real estate, the ABS tribe. Brother Ben X has a really great team of coaches that lead every single week this really rich discussion. So we were studying the book, The Psychology of Money. And thankfully I was having some technical difficulties, so I would kind of freeze up and I couldn't unmute so we're studying it. And the whole book starts out talking about Bill Gates. And I'm all like, old spotty, like I'm always having to deal with this guy. Like now it's in ABS, right? Or, not personally, but in theory. So I'm like writing all these notes thinking, okay. Like many business books and stuff, they talk about, Microsoft and Bill Gates and this and that. And they sort of talked about his outlier potential of like the 1 in a million chances of that he would be in the high school that he was in and have, the early development and all that stuff. So it gave me pause to realize that, the wickedly wise, it's still all by God's design in this time for us to come into the knowledge of self, even if we hate the process, right? Like we're like, this guy again. But anyhow, the wickedly wise are doing their job, and I should just acknowledge them on their post and use that as an inspiration to do better at my own. That being said, then we go into talking about, risk and luck and covered Bernie Madoff, you know, and how he was much older when he went, you know, really too far with his psychology of money and lost his mind and went like way over the top, did this, you know, world famous Ponzi scheme type thing that now, you know, his name is synonymous with being a high level criminal scammer. And so it gave me hope, actually, for Bill Gates and all that crew of just the psychology of money, that it's messing with them. So with the food supply scene, right? So because God is the best knower, I have to see all these things in context of that. Even the evil thoughts that are coming into the mind of the wickedly wise, God is still in control of those. And so the Bernie Madoff thing gave me actually some moment of like insight, just thinking, this could be it. This could be the, you know, the pandemic, meaning, and like the 5-year period of the pandemic that we have some behind to look at and ahead to kind of see that Bill Gates, perhaps this is his Madoff moment, right? Perhaps he went a little too hard and played a little too far on the whole, you know, Agenda 2050, Agenda 2030, you know, a vaccine for every ill kind of thing with their, how, you know, he sees it as a great investment, this great thing. And, you know, how he just happens to have Event 201 and all these things that he's predicting and forecasting the future, right? And just how a lot of roads seem to lead back to him or his foundation or somebody that worked for his foundation or some sort of little convoluted road. You're right back at that name, right? Bill Gates. And so I had this idea of the mandrake root, you know, from the Harry Potter movies pop into my mind, because I was just thinking like, no, you know, we can't just take on these programming things of like food shortages, because there already actually is a food shortage. There was a food shortage in 2015, 2010, like the flooded market of food-like products that aren't really food. That's actually the real food shortage. And so it just got me thinking about this little mandrake thing, like pulling him up. And he's screaming, you know, like, no, GMOs for thee, but not for me. I have my whole plan. I have it all worked out. You know, bury me again, respite me again. Let me finish my plan. And just how it's up to us, you know, to grow food, whether or not you want to be in the field producing it, right? So I understand the resistance to wanting to have to do that type of work. Like perhaps you have all sorts of specialized training and different things, and you're not really interested in doing any sort of work in the fields or agriculture or whatever, but we all have to be invested in some way. So some of us have more, you know, time than we do money. Some of us have agricultural skills. Some of us have financial skills that then they're able to, you know, invest and generate more funds. However you go about it, whatever lane you find yourself in, that is really just, you know, thinking collectively to that. Not only is no one coming to save us, like they're purposely burning down literally the, you know, the supply chains, because they have this theory. They're playing their little biosphere game and doing all these different things. And so it's a great opportunity overall just to examine, you know, how do we want to eat to live, right? And so we can look to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his books, How to Eat to Live, and see a framework for a farm emerge, and just have like an invitation back into the, you know, to the scenario, because I just have to look at it as like an invitation and just realizing what is their objective with scaring everyone like this, because, you know, we spend so much money as a nation on, you know, military expenditure, and doesn't really seem to be much budget for anything else, right? Like they can't seem to really get anything done. They don't ever have a, you know, a lot of debate about military spending and things like that. So that's all seems to be where everything is concentrated. So I just wanted to kind of reframe that and just like really uproot that. Look at that sucker. Look at that. Look at it. You know, it's not just sort of like, oh my goodness, food shortages. It's so much more complex than that. And so I just felt like sharing that tonight. This is